Thank you for being here. I'm pretty excited to introduce my friend and former city commissioner, Susan Botcher, and her partner in community activism, Bobby Murmer. We're going to start with Susan first. They have done a great job educating us. And one quick thing I just want to say is yesterday when I was poll watching, a couple pulled in, and one of the passenger, the woman said, "Can you please explain what at large, yes, at large district means?" And of course I could, thanks to these two. So welcome. We're going to start with Susan Botcher first. Welcome. Gee.
I'll give you those.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. And that's exactly why we're doing these speaking tours. Even if you've already voted, what you learn here, you can share with people who you encounter who may not have voted yet. They're still looking for more information. Like that? Oh, okay. I think you're doing feedback here. Okay, yeah. So on your ballot are 3 local referenda. This is one of them, at-large districts. And what this is talking about is changing the charter of Alachua County from what is now single-member districts back to at-large districts. Yeah, next slide. We don't have a remote, so I can't do this. Okay, so what happened? So back in 2022, the state legislature put on the Alachua County ballot a referendum to change from at-large districts, which we had been doing forever and ever, which 60% of counties in Florida do, to single-member districts. This was not requested by the county commission. It was not requested by the citizens. It was something that had been considered in the past 20 years by the charter review commissions for the county and had been, it never got any traction, so it never went anywhere. So the state legislature put this on our ballot. And I'll get to that. Yeah. And so it is being implemented this year. Single member districts. It passed by just a little over 2,500 votes. So what's the difference between single member districts and at-large districts? When you hear the word single member district, that is the operative word, single, which means you vote for only one commissioner in a single district. That's the district where you live, where you're registered to vote. And that's one seat every 4 years because county commission terms are 4-year terms. With at-large districts, you get to vote for all the commissioners who are running that election cycle. And as you can see in gubernatorial election years, midterm elections, there's 2 county commissioners on the ballot. Under at-large district system, you get to vote for both of those, regardless of where you live in the county. Presidential years like this year, there's 3 seats. Again, under at-large districts, doesn't matter where in the county you live, you get to vote for all 3 of those. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a map. This is from the Supervisor of Elections office. And these are the districts, the county commission districts, where you see the foggy areas where it kind of looks like cloud cover. Those are the municipalities throughout the county. So for example, over here is Hawthorne, way up there is Waldo, Alachua High Springs. So that gives you an idea of how the districts are cut. Next slide, please. And this is a close-up of how the districts come together in the city of Gainesville. So basically, it's like this big, real sloppy kind of pie. But based on the rules of how redistricting is done, each district has to have continuity. You cannot have like a donut hole. You have to have a balance of population, and you have to have a balance geographically. So next slide, please. All right, so on your 2024 ballot, depending upon where you live, you may or may not have a county commission election on your ballot. If you live in District 1, Mary Alfred's the incumbent. She's running for re-election against Elizabeth Dobler. And so you only get to vote in that only if you live in District 1. Districts 2 and 4, again, gubernatorial years, that's when those seats are up. So nobody gets to vote in those. And if you live in 2 and 4, you can't vote in 1. You have to wait 2 more years if we stay with single member districts. Anna Prizia, again, incumbent running for re-election against Jen Garrett. You can only vote in that election if you live in District 3. And then District 5, normally that would be on the ballot for District 5 residents, but Chuck Chestnut did not draw a challenger, so he's automatically reelected. So people in District 5 don't get to vote for anybody. Next one. Okay, so again, to drive home the point of what's the difference between single-member districts and at-large districts. With single-member districts, you only get one chance to vote for one commission seat, which means you have one chance every 4 years to have your voice and your values represented on the county commission. With at-large districts, you have up to a chance to elect 5 county commissioners. If all 5 of your preferred candidates win, then you have full representation, 5/5 representation for your voice and your values. So next slide, please. So this really kind of like drives it home that with single member districts, you have at best 1/5 representation on the county commission. Single member districts reduces your voice on the county commission. If you're going to have only one person on the county commission advocating for what's important in your district versus at-large districts, you know, even if only 3 of your preferred candidates win, you still have a majority voice on the county commission. So next slide, please. So the way we want to fix this is we have a referendum on the ballot, and here's how this referendum got on the ballot. Citizens went to the county commission and lobbied them. It came from within this community, and we lobbied the county commission, and they agreed that they wanted to put this on the ballot because of how narrowly it passed, how narrowly single-member districts passed, and why it passed. And so this is how it's going to look on your ballot. It's going to be on the back page, second to the last item, I think. Second to the last item on your ballot, third to the last item on the ballot. And it's just going to say amending the county charter to provide for commission elections on an at-large basis. We're saying, please vote yes. So why did this pass? Well, this might look familiar to you. These are 3, and I kind of have them overlapping here. These are 3 flyers that were sent out in 2022. And as you can see, Rodney Long is on there and Chuck Chestnut, both commissioners. You also see up here the NAACP logo. And what these flyers don't tell you is the people behind these flyers, the opposition to what we're doing now. They did not ask Commissioner Long or Commissioner Chestnut or the NAACP if they could use their images in these quotes. Besides, these quotes come from the 1980s when the city of Gainesville was doing their redistricting process. It had nothing to do with the 2022 referendum that was on the ballot. But when people got these, that's what they thought. They thought, oh, well, you know, these Black elected officials are endorsing changing to single-member districts. That's not the case at all. In fact, we have a quote from Chuck Chestnut regarding this, and of course now the new, these are the new flyers that just came out just this week that oppose our at-large districts. They are advocating for single-member districts. This is the quote from Chuck Chestnut. There was an unauthorized use of my name and image in a political flyer advocating Alachua County commissioners be elected using single-member districts, which I am against. This is the second time this ploy was used to trick and confuse voters, and I abhor this illegal use of my name and image. These tactics sully the political realm, and those responsible should be held accountable. I was never contacted about using my name or image in these advertisements. Strong words, because what they did, these are flyers, these are mailers that I got. What they did, oh, I don't have the one from, there was some sent directly to Black precincts, and they had Chuck Chestnut's image on them again. Well, no, you know, political speech it's very difficult. Political speech has, you know, a very high bar for being able to do something. What we can do is know about it and vote against it. And, you know, I mean, we can eventually talk about who's behind it. But anyway, so these are what went out last time. They're doing it again. They're very smart. They wait until early voting and then they flood people's mailboxes and they confuse people. And it's triggering, it's manipulating white guilt, you know, because we're like, oh yeah, we really do need to have more Black people elected to government here, right? Let me take questions at the end, okay? Okay, next flyer. Okay, so their premise is unless you have single member districts, you cannot get Black candidates elected. And it's just not the case. Here is a list of all the Black and African-American candidates who have been and are serving in Alachua County. Again, a map of Alachua County. So if they can't get elected because they're Black, and we have at-large, you know, I mean, you're basically electing them countywide, then how did these folks get into office? So it's a false argument. Next slide, please. Then when you kind of drill down to why there has been an argument for single member districts, it's because in some areas, not Alachua County, but in some areas, there is a concentration of Black citizens and voters, as opposed in conjunction, or excuse me, in contrast with their entire county. So you have to have that single member district specific to guarantee that minorities can get elected. But that's not the case here in Alachua County, and it's not the case either in all the municipalities around Alachua County. So these are, you can't see it, under the green splotches are the different smaller municipalities here that have Black representation. So not only are we electing people of color countywide, but they are being elected on an at-large model in their own communities. Next slide. Okay, so what's this really about? It's really not about racial equity. So you've probably heard that Keith Perry, Senator Keith Perry, filed a lawsuit to try to stop this. He wanted this to be thrown from the ballot. He didn't want your votes to be counted. And he doesn't want the election to be certified if it passes. The judge said no. But what's really important, and this is where the truth came out, is when Keith Perry was before a judge and sworn to tell the truth, he told the truth. And he said, at-large districts make it nearly impossible for Republican candidates to win. It has nothing to do with race. And so I'm going to take a moment here to say, really? I've been in Gainesville. I've been in Alachua County since 1975. I remember Republicans being on the county commission and the Gainesville City Commission and elected around the county. Yeah, there's been, well, not just Republicans, but very conservative Democrats. And they get elected. The reason you don't see it recently is because the Republican Party has damaged its own brand. They have gone so far off the rails that even traditional conservative Republicans don't like their message. And that's why it's harder for them to get elected in Alachua County, because they're so far off the rails. So next slide, please. All right, so what's happened? So Keith Perry was hoping to prevent this from being voted on. The judge said, the election's going to go forward. Judges usually grant injunctions when they're confident the ruling will be held up by appeal, but in this case, the judge did not grant the injunction. So we're optimistic. Next slide, please. So the county, because the county put it on the ballot, so the county is who they're suing, not us. So the county filed an appeal, and what the judge said is, after the election's over, if this passes, we're going to have a hearing and we'll talk about it then. We're going to look at the case on its merits. And so I actually called Kim Barton myself as soon as this came down. And I said, you're going to count the votes? She said, absolutely. You're going to certify the record, the election? She said, absolutely. So don't be dissuaded. Don't think, oh, well, I shouldn't vote on it because there's a lawsuit. Vote and tell your friends to vote on this too. All right, so we know who's against us. We know who's against this, Keith Perry. And, you know, by association, probably the larger Republican presence here, Republican Party here. This is who's for at-large districts. Legal women voters. Oh, by the way, the NAACP. The NAACP has given us their endorsement, and they did out of the gate. Okay, so now you're probably going, yeah, but didn't they say that there was a cease and desist letter, and there's been all this, maneuvering behind the scenes with the NAACP national and the NAACP local. Unfortunately, those wheels grind slowly. And again, the opposition knows that, and that's why they do things the way they do, because they know that we don't have time to really adequately, strongly respond. So here's some others. We're adding other local elected officials all the time. I just didn't have time to update this list here. So next slide. So we're asking you to please vote yes on at-large districts. Even though we have just over a week, we're still trying to fundraise because we have more mailers that we have to send out to counter this stuff, because they're sending mailers out 2-3 a day to specific areas to try and, obfuscate the truth. If you want to send us a check, that's where you send it to. And we have yard signs here, handouts on all the chairs. So at this point now, I'd like to take questions. You had a question. I answered it. That's okay. So are there any other questions? Yes.
All right.
Okay, so the judge, yeah.
Who's the judge on this case? I'm sorry?
Shinholzer?
Shinholzer.
Yeah, he was,
Not Eighth Circuit.
Yeah, you would not have heard the name. He did not serve in the circuit. He's a retired judge who served in a circuit down in Southwest Florida. Initially, Judge Keem caught the case.
Donna
and then-
Kime, yeah.
Kime, sorry. Yeah,
Mhm.
Judge Kime caught the case. And somehow it was given to a retired judge who was called into action from a different circuit.
And is that Judge Shinholzer going to hear on the merits after the election? No?
no, I'm sorry? An appeals judge.
Oh, it's going to
Yeah.
the DCA. Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So are there any other questions? Yes, ma'am. That's okay. Go ahead.
People at home.
I'm sure you told us this, but it flew by me. What did you say about onealachuacounty.com? The organization?
That's us. That's the PAC that we started so that we could fundraise, so that we could do these kind of events, buy yard signs, send mailers out to educate people so that they actually have the truth behind this. That's us. We're One Alachua County.
So are you identified with one of the parties?
No.
Independents?
No.
Okay.
In fact, I don't even think we asked like the local Democratic Party to give us money. And if we did, I don't think they would. I mean, they're endorsing us, they are telling people on their slate cards to vote yes,
Mhm.
but are they financially supporting us and backing us? No.
Mhm. I was just curious.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Any other questions, concerns? While you're thinking, just want to point out, I noticed that you hand out the Gainesville Iguana. The September and October issues have lengthy articles on there. Bobby and I wrote and co-wrote these articles. So if you want a little bit more information, you can get that in the Gainesville Iguana. It's available online. I submitted something to the Independent Florida Alligator. Haven't heard back if they're going to publish it, but the Alachua Chronicle, if you know what that is, it's an online news source produced out of Newberry. So it's got a decidedly conservative kind of leaning to it. But I submitted a 500-word article and they said it's going to be published today and go live tomorrow. So hopefully. All right. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Are there other things we can do to help prevent gerrymandering in the county?
Well, it's kind of interesting that this is when I say this, the strategy, the long game that the Republicans play. Their strategy for single member districts is so that then once they get a majority, because that's what they're hoping to do, is to really focus just on each single member, each single district, so that they can, because they have more money than God, we don't. And so they overwhelm the voting population with misinformation to get their candidates elected under false pretenses, as I've demonstrated here. And so their long game is that once they have a majority on the county commission, they're going to redo the districts. And that's kind of one of their tactics. They've done it statewide. We know how they operate, and the same people who did the statewide stuff are here in Alachua County. And so they've got that resource right here. So, yes, sir. Okay. I think we're done. And now you need to introduce.
Okay, now privilege of introducing Bobby Murmer, and he's going to talk to us about oh, I don't know how to say it, the mess at GRU. Oh, no. Anyway, you want to tell us what to do about, say what?
We have to be careful. We're in church.
Bobby Murmer.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hey, yes, I'm Bobby Murmer. I'm a chairperson and campaign manager for Let the Voters Decide. We are the political committee that is supporting a yes vote on the local public utilities Gainesville Charter Amendment referendum. This is the only City of Gainesville charter amendment that will be on your ballot this year. It's at the very end of your ballot. So right out the gate, I'm going to say the number one thing you can do to help us with this is tell everybody you know to complete their entire ballot and go all the way down. And the very last thing, vote yes. That's the most important thing you can take away from this today. Next slide, please. So what are we talking about here? What will this referendum do if it passes? So we are trying to abolish the GRU authority, which was created via special act or a local bill in 2023. So Representative Chuck Clemens, who does not live in the city of Gainesville, who lives in, he claims Newberry, actually lives in Tioga. I don't know why he doesn't want anybody to know that. He had introduced this local bill, HB 1645, and he did this in a very sneaky way. He introduced it after the legislative session had started. You have to have a delegation meeting, so every representative in the county has to vote on it in a meeting of just representatives from that county. He held that meeting in Tallahassee, very unusual, in the middle of session. The entire community, except for maybe 6, 7 people, were opposed to it. We drove up to Tallahassee. We lobbied hard against it, but unfortunately, with the supermajority, we were unable to stop it, and it slid right through. And despite all the opposition, it passed. And now we have this authority that is controlling essentially half of our city, our electric, our water, wastewater, our natural gas systems. And they are appointed entirely by Governor Ron DeSantis. They are accountable to nobody but that governor's office. Next slide. So why did this come to be? Dotty, you put it very well. This mess at GRU. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to rush through this to leave time for questions because I know this could be a tricky topic. So why is this such a big deal? Why did we come to a place where the state government was able to come in and take us over? Was the city on the verge of bankruptcy? No. People thought it was. Is GRU the most expensive utility in the state? No. But people are told it is. Ever since I moved here in 2014, I've heard bad thing after bad thing after bad thing about GRU. It seemed interesting to me because I lived under Duke in St. Petersburg, which interestingly has higher rates, does a lot of bad things. So GRU didn't seem that bad to me. But after year after year after year of hearing these things, it's sort of in the zeitgeist. And people all of a sudden just assume that it's true. I was just talking to my neighbor yesterday. I had to remind my neighbor, to vote yes on local public utilities because their initial reaction when they asked me about their ballot, they asked me what the local public utility referendum was about. And I said, GRU gouges us. And they'd be like, no, actually, it's not that expensive, right? These canards are so prevalent that it basically allowed us to be taken over by the government. So I'm just going to clear the air a little bit on some of the most persistent myths about GRU. Thank you. So GRU bills are the highest in Florida. That is absolutely not true. To be fair, we are on the higher side among public electric providers in Florida, but we are below average. We are below the private utility average, and we are also cheaper than 6 other utilities in the state overall. Another common myth that the city commission used GRU as its piggy bank, when in fact, every city with a public utility, municipally owned public utility, has what's called a general fund transfer. Governments cannot tax themselves. So this piggy bank canard, all that's referring to is what the city gets from the utility that it would otherwise get from a private utility. What Duke would pay the city of St. Petersburg, what Duke would pay Pinellas County, what TECO pays the city of Tampa and Hillsborough County. That's all it is. Another constant, persistent myth is that the Deerhaven renewable plant, the biomass plant, is a boondoggle. It was a waste. It's actually what brought the utility down to the verge of bankruptcy. And it's just hippy dippy BS. And we have to, get rid of city control over GRU because they build these monstrosities that do no good. When in fact, Deerhaven Renewable is extremely important to our community because we have locally sourced fuel, which protects us and insulates us from volatile natural gas prices. So natural gas goes up and down over time. You have spikes, you have dips. So you need some sort of baseline, some sort of stability in your fuel portfolio and your generation portfolio to be able to insulate yourself from these sudden, the word's escaping me, but these sudden spikes in cost. And that's what Deerhaven does. And in fact, I believe it was Moody's, but don't quote me. It was definitely Moody's. The credit rating agencies, Moody's actually praised us for having Deerhaven Renewable. When gas prices were skyrocketing, I believe right after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Yeah. They praised us for being insulated against those fuel cost spikes. Next slide. Biggest myth of all probably is that GRU is on the verge of collapse and cannot be saved, when in fact you can see here all three of the major credit rating agencies rate GRU very, very highly. Fitch, we have been upgraded in July. The city of Gainesville was upgraded in July. We are now one step away from the very top rating you can have under Fitch. We're 3 steps away for S&P. And we are at the highest grade of the investment level for Moody's. Next slide. So why should we change? Is this like the Oscars? Okay. So those were the lies that got us here. Now that we're here, what has happened? So I'm going to tell you about the 5 worst actions that DeSantis's GRU authority has taken. Next slide. So let's start here from the bottom on your right. They've eliminated veterans programs. So you, before you had a veteran-owned business preference. So when GRU was looking for contractors for services and materials and supplies, there was a veterans preference. They got rid of that. There was a local business preference. They got rid of that, right? It's another good thing about a public utility is we can keep more of our money locally, right? Help our economy, keep that flowing internally. But when they start acting like a business, you open the gates to being able to have all that money escape out of Alachua County and Gainesville. Rooftop solar, they've raised rates on rooftop solar owners. Net metering has essentially been gutted. It is no longer financially feasible to install rooftop solar because you cannot make your money back by savings on your bill. So essentially they raised rates on the people who are, trying to help lower our greenhouse emissions. This one's really near and dear to my heart. They ended Connect Free, which supports affordable housing programs and also allows people to connect to the city's sewer system more cheaply so they can get off of wells, which is also important for the environment. Yep. But they also done, I should have put it on here, low income ratepayer support. They gutted or they cut their contract, or sorry, to be more accurate, they did not renew their contract with the Community Weatherization Coalition, which saves on average 15% on all customers' bills when they do an energy tune-up. So the CWC, Community Weatherization Coalition, will go into your house. They will insulate your sockets. They will help install like water regulators. They do things that lower your utility bill on average by 15%. It's available to anybody, but it predominantly or disproportionately benefits low-income people, and that contract was not renewed. Meanwhile, rates have not gone down. Rates have not gone down. What has gone down is low-income ratepayer support, but something has gone up, and that is Ed Blarski's salary, $332,016. He is paying himself. A disgraced former general manager of the utility who snaked his way onto the authority board and then maneuvered to fire his replacement and install himself as the new GM, renamed CEO, because the dude has delusions of grandeur, then pays himself the highest salary in the history of the city of Gainesville. It's disgraceful. Ed Bilarski. Do we have his address? So do we have his address? Okay. Next slide. So what can we do to fix this? Well, again, I previewed it at the beginning. You can go all the way down to the very bottom of your ballot. When you see local public utilities, City of Gainesville Charter Amendment, vote yes. What this would do would delete Article 5 of the city charter, which created a GRU authority, and restore home rule over GRU. What was that? Article 7, yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry, Article 7. Article 5 is, the local bill had something to do with Article 5. It deleted the position of GRU general manager from the city charter. So that's where my confusion was. Next slide. So what do we have to gain by passing this? Well, DeSantis will no longer control half of our city. We can restore home rule and accountability. We can prevent the privatization of our utility, which is a very real threat. We can protect the health and safety by fully staffing water wastewater facilities, which are currently understaffed. The head of the water wastewater department risked their job back in the summer to say openly in public at a meeting of the GRU authority, you're putting the health and safety at risk. Please do not cut us anymore. And we can once again govern our utility with our values, our Gainesville values being the guide. Next slide. These are everybody that supports local public utilities. You'll notice it's basically everybody from the last, everybody who supports and endorses at-large districts. Plus you have the Sierra Club and the Community Weatherization Coalition and City Commissioner Cynthia Chestnut. They support it, and so should you. Next slide. Okay, so how am I on time? Yes. Okay, I'm ahead of time. All right, so who has questions?
I have a comment on the Community Weatherization Coalition. You know, our fellow church member, Mary Ann Shrink. How do you say her last? Shrink, thank you. Actually, she did a reading today. She was like maybe the founder of that. She's very, very involved in that. So you can certainly talk to her about the damage that they're doing.
Thank you.
Any questions, comments?
Share a comment. So, some people might wonder, so what's the big deal? The authority, is overseeing this, and, so what about DeSantis? You can show up at the authority board meetings and you can talk to them and say, hey, I've been a ratepayer since, for 100 years. When you go before the Gainesville City Commission, when they served as the board of directors for GRU, they listened. I used to be on the Gainesville City Commission, and when citizens came to talk to us about, anything related, well, to anything, but specifically about GRU, we knew we had to respond. We knew we had to care about what these people were coming to talk to us about, solve the problem, address the issues. So I think it was back in May, when after DeSantis had to reappoint the authority board members. One of the authority board members was just, they were all listening to a presentation by staff, by GRU staff, regarding the general fund transfer, now called the general services contribution. And there was talk amongst the authority that they were going to completely eliminate it or slash it to just, nothing. And staff's presentation was, okay, here's the impact to the city. Here's what's going to happen. And trying to educate these authority board members who had never been in elected office before, who had never, dealt with anything having to do with a utility before. None of them had utility experience. Go figure. And so what they were trying to do is to communicate to them that if you do this, here is what's going to happen to the city of Gainesville. You're going to have to cut this and you're going to have to cut that. To his credit, authority board member Craig Carter, who used to serve on the Gainesville City Commission, said, yeah, we need to be concerned about this. Then a series of citizens got up, and spoke and said, we're really concerned about this. Please don't eliminate the general services contribution. Authority board member James Haslam listened to all of this and then said, I was in the room, so this is a direct quote. He said, I'm not elected. I couldn't care less what happens to the city. It's on video. You can go look it up. I'm not making it up. I'm not elaborating. I'm not, padding what he said. He said, I couldn't care less. So this is what we're dealing with, because he knows, as did the other 4 authority board members, that they're appointed, they're only responsible to DeSantis. DeSantis is the only person who can unseat them. We can't vote them out. And so what's frustrating is a lot of people who live in the county, okay, but our GRU customers say, well, I didn't have a voice, before when the city commission, it's like, you think you have a voice now? At least you could come to the city commission meetings. And we never said, when people came to talk to us, we never said, hey, where do you live? Are you in the city or are you outside the city? We just listened to people's concerns because we knew that we are delivering services to them. And here you have it. You have an authority board that, and the thing that just really got me was nobody else, none of the other 4 said anything to him to say, no, we do have to listen to the citizens. We do have to care. They all just kind of sat there and the meeting went on. So.
Any questions? All right, so I was going to bring something up. So one of the reasons I thought this was going to be brought up, one of the reasons I was rushing through the presentation was I assumed that somebody was going to ask me about the recent lawsuit against the city for this referendum. You might have heard that this case was heard this past week, and the judge had issued a temporary restraining order, putting the case on hold until they can hear, until after the election, assuming that the referendum passes. They can have a 2-day trial, hear the case on its merits, weigh the case on its merits, and make a decision on the outcome of the referendum, whether or not we can enforce it if we pass it in December. Why is this important? This means more than ever that not only do we have to win this, we have to win this big. We have to send a very, very clear message that this is what the city wants. This is what our community wants. The people who passed HB 1645, which created the GRU authority, right? They have this impression that there's only a couple groups that support GRU and everybody else in the city hates the city and GRU. So that's why the utility needs to be taken away from locally elected officials and given to this unappointed authority. We need to show them that that is not the case. We need to show them that Gainesville wants to keep its utility and it wants home rule over its utility, which means that, the goalpost has now been moved. We need to get over 60%. That's why it's so important. Spread the word. This is a church. Go and spread the good news. There still will be a vote. There still will be a vote. The votes will be counted and certified, but we need to send a clear signal to the legislature, to the judges. Judges are political animals, believe it or not, that this is what the people want. So please talk to your friends, family, neighbors. Yes, sir.
I've been in a place where we've heard them talk. How close are they to what you're talking about? Because they make all kinds of really good information about the people that you normally don't get. Do you have any comments on that? Are they pro, con, or neutral?
The League of Women Voters was one of the first 2 groups who supported this. The League of Women Voters, along with the Alachua County Labor Coalition, were the 2 groups that led the charge to ask the city commission to put this on the ballot. So the League of Women Voters is supporting a yes vote and has been there since the very, very beginning.
They're a very good place to look at. Yeah, I'm not an expert on all of these names and people, and you need to have some kind of group that you can feel comfortable with whatever your leaning of this is. So.
Yeah, so the League of Women Voters has good information about this on their Vote 411 site, which is vote411.org.
They also have a play card that you can get that talks about all of this stuff, which is handy to have because I don't think all of us know who all the people are or what they are.
Yeah. So yeah, they've been invaluable partners. to get this on the ballot and in the campaign. Yes.
Thank you for both of your presentations. They're really informative, and I'm wondering if they're available on the internet, that we could refer neighbors and we could refer friends to, because I think the facts behind it are really helpful.
Yeah.
On the flyers. Okay, thank you.
Got it, Bobby?
And that's it. All right. Thank you very much.
As a regular citizen to try to keep up with things, but now they've added lawsuits, which makes it even more hard for us. But thank you very much, both you and Susan. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.